Thank you for joining to Intimate Conversations with Men. When we have very important conversations, and some of this, a lot to learn. Today, I have a special guest. I've been very curious and inspired to interview this man. He is different from what a lot of women seen before. And I want to know what's so special about him and how did he manage to be so special. Kelly Griego. He is an endurance athlete, a leader professional, and a devoted family man whose life is a true testament of the power of showing up fully. He is that way at home and in the boardroom. Help me welcome Kelly Griego.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Kelly, if I take you back to 20 years ago of your life.
Okay.
Do you have an idea what your life was going to be in the next 20 years? And would you please describe what was in your mind?
So if I go back 20 years, I was a young father. I was married at the time to my children's mother. It was about the time that I was starting my journey with running and in all of the self-discovery that came from that. And that was really a major fork in the road for me, from my mental well-being, from my journey to becoming more of who I am today, which really is the me that I always wanted to be. I think that's a summary of what I can think of if I flash back 20 years right now.
And what out of that definition or description, what came true to you?
I don't know if there was any real predictions that I had or anything that I was specifically looking forward to, because it was right in front of when I really started having more of that mindset, more of what is it that I can accomplish? What is it that I can be impactful with? What is it that I'm passionate about? And so I was on the cusp of that. And so that just wasn't the mindset that I had. You know, my mindset was probably more along the lines of, what do I have to do so we can get a little bit bigger house or have a little bit nicer cars? Or how can I continue to further myself in my corporate career to be able to provide more and do more of the things that I thought that really mattered to the family, that was professionally driven.
At one point in your life, you stepped into a new family where you got to play the role of a bonus dad to teenagers. As we all know, that's a complicated part of our lives already. What do you learn from your previous part of your life that was wisdom that you apply to this part of your life?
I don't know if there's anything specific that I learned, but I always really enjoyed the idea of being a bonus dad, because it was more of a scenario that I could just work on being a trusted person, just work on being somebody that shows up consistently. There was no pressure to be a dad. Obviously, you know, my bonus daughter has a dad, and I wasn't trying to be that. And so it was more impactful to me to just work on the one-on-one relationship and do that by showing up, do that by listening, by being attentive, applying all the things that I do with my children and have done with my children, in doing it the same way. And then really taking her lead on what that meant. You know, it's not forcing, hey, I'm stepdad or I'm this. It's, you know, I'm Kelly and she's Mara, and we could just start there, and whatever she decides to name it or think of it, that's that's on her, and I'm not going to drive it any one way, because that's her decision. And I really wanted to impress that upon her in building the trust and in building the relationship that we have now after 11, 12 years of knowing each other.
Well, I know for sure she speaks highly of you, and and that's not always the what happens in relationships. Um, you talk about no surprises as as a guiding principle in your home. Where do you come from, and how does it actually play out day to day with 3 teenagers?
Yeah, that was one. I've always been a strong believer in therapy for myself, and that was part of my growth journey and becoming who I feel I am today. And it was the same thing with the children. Having them be fairly young, 3 and 5 or 4 and 6, when I was separating with my children's mother, and we sent them to therapy, and that was a great thing. And they had an amazing therapist, and it was just as helpful for us, I believe, as parents as it was for the children. And one of the things that they emphasized was, obviously this is a big change. There's going to be time with just mom and just dad, and that's brand new. And the importance of not surprising them. And where it really resonated was in terms of new relationships. I had dated some people, before meeting Megan, but it didn't get to a point where I wanted to start what the therapist did a great job of as describing a process. What does that relationship process look like to these children? It's not somebody knocks on the door one day and, hey, guess what? This is dad's girlfriend. And it's a total stranger, something that's brand new. And I've just tried to apply that with everything with them, whether it's going to be a change in the schedule. I'm letting them know. I'm giving them that information so that it's not these jolts or picking up and moving quicker than they're prepared for, because they're already doing that. They're spending a couple days here, then a couple days at mom's, and then coming back for a weekend. And there's enough changes and movements happening that anything that I was going to choose to bring to the table was going to completely be known, and just not pulling the rug out from under them, because there's enough they don't understand at being 3 and 5 and, young children. And then just carrying that through, taking that all the way to them being young teenagers to teenagers and now young adults. I still do it. I want them to see this information coming their way now more than ever, so I can get their feedback, because they have opinions, they have thoughts, and I want to build and create a place that they can share those.
As I can see that you are a great believer in therapy, what would you say to a man who's listening or watching you right now, who's struggling to open emotionally with anybody, let alone with a stranger, but desperately is in need of help?
Yeah, I can't stress the importance of just letting go of the idea that you're going to somebody to fix you. It's not about being fixed. It's really about creating this toolbox that you have so that, your anxieties, your stresses, your depressions, whatever it is that's weighing you down, you start to accumulate tools so that you can help start solving them on your own. And we all need help to get there. It's not a one visit, you meet with an hour and everything's fixed. To me, it led to tremendous growth. The therapist I work with was amazing at always leaving me with 1 or 2 questions during that session that they weren't necessarily questions for me to answer. It was just giving me a different perspective that I was preventing myself from seeing. And just that little perspective change and some really good questions, it just helped ease me and helped allow me to be better at self-reflecting and to be better at, considering how my actions may impact things or not. And I encourage just to jump in if it's I think as men, we struggle with having those conversations with each other as friends and peers. And whether it's history, whether it's our fathers, whatever we'd like to point at to say that it's difficult, but really do it, because it's a commitment, not just to yourself, but all the people that you touch and impact, your family, your coworkers. It flows into everything you do, and you're worth doing it for. And so just take that jump and trust that the process is going to have a lot of good along the way if you stick with it.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that that gets to them and feel more safe to really take that step, Kelly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see. I wrote some questions here. I wrote another about therapy. Let me see if this is. Let me read it, and if you have an answer, then we'll go to the next one. You may open about the role therapy has played for men who are resistant to that. What would you say to them? I already asked that. How about that? You emphasize communication as a common tone of your home. Was that something that came naturally to you, or do you have to learn and unlearn some things to get there?
It was very much both. It was a process in unlearning previous habits. One of the things that was easy to identify was, a role in a voice that I chose to play in, the marriage with my children's mother. And it wasn't that it was right or wrong. It was just how we fit in, and not finding the ways to recognize what that meant for communication, what it meant for conflict resolution. And, I really took the process of going through a separation, going into therapy, to realize how important it is to be able to have that voice of yours, have that way to effectively have a conversation, especially the uncomfortable ones. I think that it was easy for me to not want to create conflict or not want to create problems. And so you can pin a lot of things in and keep them to yourself, and how negative that can turn out to be. And so I really had to unlearn that. And again, I credit therapy with that. And then having the confidence to know that if I'm meeting you and I'm telling you a story that maybe it's not the best thing from my past, not being afraid to share it and recognizing that that can be an opportunity for both of us as we're getting to know each other. And this was very profound with Megan and I, where there were times early on where, topics would start to come up where previously I may start to dance around them and find a way to not talk about them. But just making the decision to say, you know what, I want to show up as who I believe I am, and that includes the things that I've done that maybe would make some people run away. But I need to be honest here because I want to set that precedence from the beginning, so that it's always a foundation built on communication. It's built on honesty. It's built on, it's okay for me to share me because I'm also willing to hear and you share you. And that just, having started a relationship there, it's made a huge difference. And I do it with new friends. I do it with anybody that I meet, because I'm not surface level. I don't like bullshitting. I don't like, sitting around and talking about sports. I want to have real conversations, and those can be uncomfortable, but I want that to happen because that's where life is. That's where I want to be. That's where people are people.
Hey, you're here. So you're not running away from conversations.
No,
I can tell that. It's interesting. You said that because when I ask an individual, I would love for you to be in my podcast. And what is this about? It's intimate conversations with men about life, love, and sex. And usually all they hear is, I talk about sex, because the answer they give me is very interesting. And I said, Or sometimes they say, "Oh, I don't talk about that." So you don't talk about life. I said, but they really, and the second thing they hear is, "Oh, I have to have a deep conversation." It's interesting, and and I have parts where they just don't even come near me because that's what they perceive. So it's very interesting to see that in a man, and I can also see the ones who come here. Not necessarily. Sometimes I don't invite them to be. I just have questions, and it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
You train your body to push through discomfort and stay the course. How much of that same mentality shows up in how you parent and lead your family? That's a great question, by the way.
It is. All of it. I mean, I feel I've learned just as much about being a father, being a spouse, being a bonus dad, being a people leader at work. I've learned just as much about being those things by choosing to do physically difficult things. And furthermore, what I've learned from working with blind athletes or, running marathons with a young man with autism, those have all been huge lessons for me in learning how to work with people, but also realize, these people have the skills to do the things that they need to do to enjoy, doing a marathon or doing an Ironman. They just do it a little bit differently than most of us because maybe they're visually impaired or they just need somebody to be there to keep them going in the right direction and do it safely. Those are all concepts that apply to being a dad and working in the corporate world and being a people leader. And so I don't think I would be the same father, person, or any of that if I didn't choose physically difficult things. Because now I find that I seek those out. And in trying to do things that I once thought were impossible for me to do physically, it's growth every day. And also, one of the things I enjoyed most about it is it's my meditation. I don't listen to music when I'm out there running. I just enjoy the world, listen to the sounds, and just let my mind go wherever it needs to go. My grandmother recently passed away, and I got to speak in the funeral and deliver her eulogy. And it was amazing to have this space to just be by myself and rethink through the stories that I so wanted to share with everybody and to be able to deliver them how I wanted to deliver them. And it's just a perfect platform for all of that, self-reflection and growth. And so I don't see myself never including that and having that be a part of my life.
Do you choose to work with these kids or is part of what you do?
Yeah, I was invited many years ago to run with a blind athlete. It was a random chance question, and it was a very impactful moment when I was asked because, I liken it to when people say my life flashed before my eyes. It's like in a split second, all these thoughts. And when this woman, Kimmer, asked me if I would run with her blind friend, I had about 10,000 thoughts, like blind people can run. And then I thought about, there's days when it's raining out and I don't want to go out for a run. Here's somebody that has to require scheduling time with somebody to come run with them so they can enjoy something that I can so easily go and do. And so after being asked once, that led to another opportunity. And then you start to meet groups. And then, there's networks and communities that live online. And I just kept saying yes, because I didn't want anybody to not be able to do a race because they couldn't find somebody to go out there with them. And I still try to do that today as much as I can. I wouldn't have continued running if I hadn't learned about that, because it gave it a whole nother reason, a whole nother purpose, a whole nother passion for trying to help other people enjoy something that I can do just by walking out my front door.
How that truly lands in your soul doing something like that, Kelly?
I mean, it's one of the most impactful things that I do. I mean, I feel it just gives me that extra sense of purpose. And whenever it's purpose driven, I mean, it always hits home where it should. And I always feel so thankful that I'm able to do it, and to see people be able to recognize their potential in doing these things where, you know, if I weren't there, maybe nobody was available and they wouldn't have been able to enjoy that. So it hits home hard for me every single time, and it's something that I take seriously as well. I mean, when you're a tool and you're something that can make or break somebody else's race, something that they've trained and prepared for, if I break down and they can't do it, that would be the worst thing ever. And it's happened once, unfortunately, but it was okay.
For high performing men in the in the field, in any field, at work, and as an athlete, um, a lot of the times they struggle between, do I be successful here, or sometimes they don't notice how much they are hurting their family by not doing the things that family desires, and it's not about doing it purposely. It's about not becoming aware that that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
How can a man start reconciling those two worlds, and would that be a difference? Would that mean to be more fulfilled?
To answer that last question, 100%. And I wasn't good at that at first when I was married to my children's mother. When I would be out training, I would feel guilty that I should be home with the kids and home with the family. And then when I would be with the family, it would be a nice day out. Oh, I should be out training. And I was never good at reconciling those two things together. And fortunately or unfortunately, it took my separation and divorce and then having specific time that I had that was 100% the children. And then it made it so much easier to prioritize. These are non-negotiable times for training. And I was working with a coach at the time, and she said, okay, you know, Mondays and Tuesdays, nothing before 5 p.m. and or, you know, later on after the kids go to bed. And that's going to be something that I can do at home because they're home sleeping. And I think what these high performing people, myself included, just didn't do was simply prioritize. I mean, we work all the time where there's competing things that need to get done, and we find a way to work on all those things, compartmentalize one thing and move to the next. But it's just taking those simple concepts and applying them to home and saying, nope, here's the expectation that at this time, maybe early in the morning, I'm training so then I can be home for soccer or baseball, or I can still do all these things. And it just takes effort and planning, but having that plan and having that effort in those right places, it makes life so much easier. Because then when you're with the family, you just enjoy it because you know everything that I'm preparing for physically is still going to be met the rest of the week. It's this chunk of time is for these family items because later on it's training items. And I can understand how difficult it is because it was for me. But once I took that mindset of just applying these things that I'm doing at work already, it really made it a lot easier. And also working with people. You know, a lot of people have professional coaches for their work and executive coaches because they want to be the best leader they can. Working with a coach on the endurance or physical side, they can be the ones to confirm, to say, no, you don't need to spend all this time that you should be with your family training because you're doing all of these things that we laid out. The plan is there. Follow the plan. You don't have to worry about mixing or choosing because that's already been done. And just follow through on the things that then you've committed to do.
I have to admit that you have this presence when I first see you, that if I had met you in person and I don't know who you are at all, I would say, do I want to feel safe with this person? Yeah, and by the way, when I stop and ask the question, there's a reason. It's because I'm still questioning, because sometimes I don't even ask, I just go.
Yeah.
But the reason why this question is because the way you look and the way you've been are two different things. You being, it's very safe. Does that make sense? And I don't know what I'm talking about this. I usually don't, but it feels safe to be in your energy. It feels safe to feel as a female, right? And I'm not sure that's important, but thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that because and it's interesting. One of my favorite stories when I did Ironman here in Madison a couple of years ago, and afterwards there was a woman that was training, and it was her first Ironman. And after the race, we all got together, and when I asked her what her favorite part of the race was, she said it was running at night
Oh,
because she doesn't run at night. Most women don't run at night. They don't feel safe to do it. They don't, feel that it's something that they should do because they'd be too worried about what all of that means. And being a girl dad, safety, feeling calm, having all of that there has always been a goal of mine. And so actually I appreciate you saying that because I want women, young women, to feel comfortable because there needs to be more of that.
thank you for saying that. And I did want to emphasize more on that because this podcast is primarily for men. But then, as you start answering, I realized that men. It is important to men to have a fulfilling relationship with women. For the men who regardless of what role the women play, it could be a sister, it could be a mother, it could be a romantic relationship, and yes, it's the problem is not men or women. The problem is what we have in our in our little bag of collection of stories that we created. And by doing that, it could be the perfect man, but we are not going to feel safe, and vice versa, right? And I think I perceive that that's an rotating energy also. And like I said, a lot of men don't feel safe to come here and have a conversation with me for whatever reason. It might not be me. It might be because this is for the entire world. So the fact that you open that door, and that, like I said, when I first saw you, that was a perception. But even that I had that perception in my mind, I was, let's see what else. It's like, it was more like, I feel like I shouldn't feel safe, but I feeling safe. What am I seeing that I'm not seeing? Does that make sense? It was more like that at the same time. Yeah. So it's like, why I'm feeling this way. And I think it's part of, how your hair and your, something there that's like, the story that I created about individuals that might look like that is one story, but then immediately in my intuition, because we women are intuitively, naturally, men are also, but we are more allowed to express that, I guess, and develop that. And that will give a man, I guess, a great opportunity to create different things, and not just with mothers, sisters, and girlfriends or wives, but daughters also, because those daughters will actually eventually. The reason why I started this podcast is because I had a conversation with a man who has two daughters, and he was so worried about this, and he's been, part of this. Even though he's not here with me, I have many conversations, and the concerns that he has about his daughters and how he wants to raise his daughters because of the men. So it is important to talk about this.
And it's important for me, if they can see those things in me that feel safe and feel comfortable, I want them to recognize that in the young men that they start to be friends with or have relationships with, to know, what feels good versus what doesn't quite feel right. And if I'm an example of that, that's the best thing I can be. And if that helps them make those decisions that they feel comfortable with because they have, they've seen what it looks like and they know how it feels. And that's an ultimate dad goal for me.
Definitely. And I think there is a whole society. I don't want to go back and forth because I'll start today. But what are you saying? It makes sense because we're in a society where we have created so many stereotypes that it's confusing sometimes to our eyes. It's confusing to our eyes. And even your, calming personality and everything, it's just like, okay, this is landing different than with my eyes, that it's landing with my intuition, and it's landing with my ears. It's interesting. Even with my eyes, it's confusing. And like, okay, what's going on here?
Well, maybe if we were meeting in person, that would be different because I'm kind of a little guy. I'm like 5'9", 150 pounds. So I lack intimidation in a physical presence. They are a little closer to the camera.
Oh, don't undermine men who are not that tall. Trust me. I mean, I have seen very, very interesting fellas with not a lot of height and that can fight a bull just with the eyes. Let's just put it that way. I actually have a fascination with an animal kingdom where I see these little the honey badger that is so small and it can fight even a lion. The lion is the boss, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't underestimate little things. I learned enough from mosquitoes, ants, and all of those that they got power. They got power. All right. Oh, this one. Parenting teens in the age of social media and smartphones is uncharted territory for most dads. What's your philosophy there, and where have you had to draw hard lines? That's a great question. Again.
Yeah. I mean, I or we in our house have never really drawn hard lines, but we've always asked a lot of questions, and not necessarily questions to, have them feel scared or have them feel like we're micromanaging their use, but really ask questions to try and understand things as they're seeing them and as they're using them. And really is just another form of encouraging communication, that if they're not going to be able to have this conversation about what it is that they're doing on whatever particular type of app, or explain, hey, are people reaching out to you and messaging, in these sorts of scenarios? And, they've always been able to demonstrate and tell us, yeah, that hasn't happened, or it did, and I ignore it, or here's what I do. And I know that we probably didn't get 100% of the full picture, but I feel in general that, there was honesty and trust that was there working both ways, that allowed that communication to dictate whether or not we were making hard decisions or just completely removing things. And, we've had second guesses too later on where maybe we were a little too lenient and we should have gotten in more. But I feel that the kids have always been pretty honest, and we've built that together, and hope that has served them to be smart users, to know what to respond to, not to respond to, what or who to engage with. I mean, maybe could have been more strict, but also comfortable with where things were.
Kelly, you are training individuals in their own, oh my gosh, other athletes, I guess that's the right way. Or how would you say that?
Yeah, I used to do more coaching directly with triathletes and then coaching of blind athletes. I haven't done that as much as in a number of years. But, whenever there is a race or time that I'm working with or plan to run with a blind athlete, there is a form of coaching and consulting that's going on.
Okay, so thank you for saying that. Now I know my question. For those individuals who are extremely challenged, but they want to become an athlete, but they're extremely challenged because they perceive to have a disability compared to other individuals, whatever that looks like, and it could be, the way that I define disability to myself. And by the way, my disability is because English is my second language, so sometimes I words wrong, and I consider that a disability, which is not necessarily. That's what other individuals will call. So, what would you say to them when they really? And the example I use, it's like telling a 4 feet tall kid, you will never be the greatest basketball player in your life, right? So that's the example. So, and I have created myself, I have been in that situation where my dream was to be on the radio since I was a little girl, and it took me a long time because I had the disability until I realized that was not going to stop me. So I am sure I'm not the only one. But with regards of athletes, and since you still do consulting, when an individual is in that mode, and by the way, that creates depression and self-worth and a lot of other issues in the state of mind, where even just to go and having a normal conversation is difficult because it's a really difficult wound to touch. Wow. What would you say to them to bring, and I don't want to say to bring it up to speed, but to bring some hope, to send some light in their way for them to see there's a possibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's funny that you asked this one because I was thinking about it last night at, midnight when I was running home from bartending. And that's another story. But anyway, I always focus on and ask and want to learn somebody's why. Because if they don't have a why they want to do this, improve or get better or start, how is irrelevant. And in getting people to break down at the why, it's easy to say, I want to get in shape. I want to lose weight. I want to, do a 5K. Okay, but that's kind of the what. That's what you want to do. But why do you want to do that? I want to set an example for my children. I had a bad doctor appointment and my health is at this teetering point and I need to do something. Those are impactful whys. Those are reasons that people will have when it gets hard, because you have to have those, because starting anything new is never easy. And if you don't have that why to turn to say, I'm doing this so I'm going to be around when my kids get married, or whatever that meaningful, impactful why is. And then it's taking action and finding something to start with. But it all goes back to that why, because there's going to be times when you're doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, or you're practicing, or you're doing a training run or lifting or yoga, whatever it may be that you're starting, there's going to be times you just hate it and you want to stop. And you will stop if you don't have that meaningful, impactful why.
That's powerful right there. So, what was your why?
I didn't have one when I started. The first time I went for a run or decided to be kind of a runner, my manager at work came up and said, hey, we're doing a half marathon. I'm doing a half marathon with some guys from the neighborhood. Do you want to do it? And I was like, okay, how far is that? And when is it? And for whatever reason, I said yes. So in a way it was, I needed to believe that I could do it to say yes. And for whatever reason, I had that belief, even though I'd never run over 2 miles in my life. And then I was going to run 13.1 in a half marathon in 4 weeks. I didn't know what I was doing, but for whatever reason, I thought that I could. And then as I started to do it, and started to have that time on my own and started to just be out there in nature, I really fell in love with it. But I would have stopped had it not been for Kimmer asking me if I would run with her blind friend. I
Oh.
would have stopped because, I had gone from a half marathon to a marathon. I started doing triathlons, and there was no real why behind it other than, ooh, this would be cool. This is the next thing that you do. But until I got that invitation to help a blind athlete, it opened my mind. And now, pretty much since 2012, every race I do is either with a blind athlete. I've pushed and pulled individuals that physically can't race, and so you're the mechanism that moves the twosome. I've run with a young autistic man a couple times in marathons, and then I fundraise. My best friend growing up, his son has a rare disease, and so I try to do ridiculous, silly endurance things because people might throw some money at a great cause. And so those have been my why, and they are 100% integral in everything that I keep doing, because without it, I would have stopped.
You mentioned earlier that I believe your grandmother just passed away.
Correct.
Uh, what is it? What is it about grief that is so difficult to deal with?
It's interesting. I know it's grief that I experienced over the last couple of weeks, but I believe because I got to spend, these 5 days with her in the nursing home, and a bunch of my family did as well. And in starting at the beginning of the week where, there are still conversations to be had and there's still communication, but then knowing and seeing the decline that was going to take place, it's almost as if, that last week of my grandmother's life really started and kind of ended that grief process for me. Because when I was on the way home, I was driving and my mom asked if I would speak at the funeral. What was pretty amazing to me is it gave me the ability to take all those thoughts that I had when I was sitting there and holding my grandmother's hands and just staring at her and looking and in the stories and thoughts, and I was just able to start putting those in the form that I wanted to share with the family, as a eulogy. And so I'm not going to say it was hard because it was expected.
Mm-hmm.
But it was easy because I loved having those memories. I loved having that time with my family. I loved, thinking of the silly stories when I was 4 years old and spending all this time alone with my grandmother. And it was just such a great opportunity. And so as much as it was a grieving process, to me, it was also a good, happy process.
I feel like it was the opportunity to speak on her honor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of honor, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Honoring. And I'm glad that you got that. I think grandparents are amazing.
Yeah.
Parents also have this memories with mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see if I have more questions here. Let me see if I haven't asked this. As a high achieving professional and endurance athlete, how do your definition of success shifts when family became the center of your life?
It didn't right away. Because I feel I was trapped in this mindset that the only success you could have was work success, was professional success.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have these thoughts of, what did it truly mean to be an impactful father or an impactful spouse? And how do you know how to show up in those ways? It just seemed to be such a monetarily driven or, succession, climbing the corporate ladder thought process. And in thinking back on it, I feel that my inability to apply that to home and being a better person, a better friend, a better husband, a better father probably prevented some of my growth and opportunity at work, because they can be so tied. It's almost like I felt I was one person at home and a different person at work. And that created internal struggle, because those things weren't compatible. And it was, living almost like a dual life. And, it took the process of separation and divorce again to refocus and really commit to joining that person no matter what. The Kelly that you meet at work is going to be the same Kelly you run into on the street, or the same Kelly that's out there with his children, or all of that, and being consistent, because that just makes life so much easier and so much less complicated. But that took failure. That took time. But also just the dedication of realizing that I'm going to be the best person I can first, and let that drive everything else.
Most men will feel defined, or will feel like ending a marriage is a way of failing. What do you learn from that to create a more fulfilling relationship?
Yeah, for me, I couldn't look at it as failing, because most of it was my choice. And when it's your choice, you have to believe in it all the way, because there's friends, there's people that are saying this is wrong, saying, you don't know what you're talking about. You need to work harder. You need to stick it out. A lot of people are saying that. And then you have some true friends that are just asking questions and supporting you and helping you, reconfirm to yourself. But you have to have that confidence, and then, but also live it. It's not just saying these things. It's how are you showing up and acting that supports that. And that was a huge difference maker, because anybody can say anything. But what is it that you're doing? How are you acting? How are you following through? And for me, a big part of that was therapy. It's like I'm committed to knowing that this is the best thing for me. And I'm doing that by showing up to therapy, taking that seriously, encouraging and taking my kids to therapy so they can get some of that for themselves as well. And then it just, you just ride that momentum of confidence and knowing and believing in yourself. Because if you're going to keep doubting it, and you're going to say, yes, overall, I would say the marriage was a failure because we're no longer together. Okay, I buy that. But I can't believe that I failed in all of these ways, knowing that I thought that it was the best thing to do for me and for my children. And then following that up with the actions and making that true, or continuing that truth.
For men who go through that process, and I hear this in many conversations about this, a big part of men's lives is the relationship with a woman. How do you, they are terrified of going back into the field of dating, and let alone find all kinds of crazy, or getting into all kinds of crazy. And I hear crazy dates. What would be your advice? Because you got into and find an amazing woman, an inspiring woman. So what would be your advice of handling this or doing this? And just for a little bit more about that, is some men just get back into dating. Some men don't take the time. Some men, the statistic says that between a man who's been married for a long time, between 2 years will be in another serious relationship. So how do you did it, and what do you learn that some men can hear, listen, and apply?
You need those friends that tell you the truth. And, you can choose to listen to their honesty and their love to try to support you, and choose to act on it or ignore it. but you need that, because I think it's those people closest to you, and also a therapist, obviously, and in being honest with them about, what has happened, what you're working on, what you're trying to go to. But that friend group, a mix of men and women that you can share these things honestly with and listen to them. They're saying, it kind of still seems like you're hung up on, what kind of partner are you going to be for anybody right now? Or is this just an escape from working on yourself? I find that that's what I've seen with a lot of men, is that it becomes a delay technique. Oh, I'm doing good. And if I jump into another relationship, then I don't have to work on the things that I should be working on in myself. And that's where that honest group of friends really comes in to hit you with those hard, honest questions, to say, are you really prepared for this? Because here's the things that I see. And here's the things that seem like all these other things in the past that you didn't like about your relationship, or didn't like that you were doing, and you're doing them again. Are you not seeing this? But that it's having honest people around you. Because the worst thing to me with a friend group is just having a bunch of people that are yes, 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 yes. When it relates to that. Now, I like my yes friends that are like, hey, you want to go on a trip random? Yes, those are great. But it's just agree that everything that you're doing is the best thing and the right thing, because it's, that's probably not the case. And have those challenging, true, honest conversations. Believe them.
Mm-hmm.
But then what that allows you to do is then go have fun with it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you still can't interact with women. I'm not saying you can't get on an app and go have some fun dates, but just let's let the idea go away a little bit of, having this long-term person, and practice being honest with the other person. Practice saying things that you never felt comfortable saying. I mean, all of it is just this great opportunity to learn how to do it in a constructive, powerful manner, instead of however you did it in the past, which was maybe never touching anything difficult, or, always being superficial and never actually having deep conversations. I mean, it's a great opportunity.
Thank you for that. I have heard that before, that it is important to have your social group, because it's the one who's going to support you when there's no, even and start dating, right? Not just in the ending, but start dating. You're right. I heard that before. Mm-hmm. For that. All right. So this has been delighting, and it's time for some rapid fire questions. Ooh. But, you can handle it. You're an athlete. You've done much, much, much difficult than this. So I'm going to say one or two words as fast as we can, and you're going to answer whatever comes to you first. Faster. No. Transformation.
Action.
Education.
Learn.
Men.
Friends.
Woman.
Friends.
Time.
Not enough.
Suffering.
Choice.
Social media.
It's there.
Believe it or not, your answer is very common. I know I'm supposed to say something, but I don't know if I'm supposed to. I don't want to say that, but something like that. Okay. Stress.
Challenge.
Fatherhood.
Amazing.
AI.
Tool.
Profession.
Paycheck.
Mind.
Strength.
Spirituality.
Hope.
God.
Universe.
Service.
Purpose.
Music.
Live.
Values.
Love.
Fears. Fear.
Overcome.
Knowledge.
Practice.
Fulfillment.
Hug.
Pornography.
Non-existent.
Society.
Oh, society. Challenge.
Connection.
Soft.
Conversation.
Love it.
Manhood.
Responsibility.
Love language.
Physical touch.
Legacy.
Remembrance.
Emotions.
Necessary.
Exercise.
Also necessary.
That's a typical answer, by the way. Parents.
Learning.
Authenticity.
Necessary.
Food.
Enjoy.
Grandmother.
Best friend.
Evolution.
Journey.
Happiness.
Every day.
Soul.
Fulfill.
Gratitude.
Appreciation.
Authority.
Abused.
Leadership.
Committed.
Identity.
Authentic.
Husband.
Support.
Wife.
Support.
Empowerment.
A gift.
Pain.
Choice.
Pleasure.
Needed.
Sex.
Connection.
Monogamy.
Connection.
Polygamy.
Interesting.
Wealth.
Abundance.
Intimacy. Intimacy.
Necessary.
Birth right.
That's right. That's a tough one. I'm blanking on a word or two. Yeah, sure.
Okay. You want to say both?
I mean, I don't. A word's just not coming to mind. I'm just
Okay. That's fine.
okay.
I think that's a difficult one, but quite often in the conversations I hear, there's a birthright, and it could be anything, it's expression or, it's a lot of about being what drives you had just by being a human, because, and for people it's different, it's just a.
It's a huge topic right now, and that's I think that's where I got pulled in so many directions, where what I would normally think it is versus how it's thought of and trying to keep removed or everything today.
Exactly. Okay. Health.
Important.
Sex.
Important.
Money.
Necessary.
Family.
Team.
Life.
Love.
Death.
Love.
Love.
Life.
Today, I feel like I have a really nice meal. Conversation. I feel fulfilled in this conversation.
Me too.
You are a very inspiring man. Um, and what I perceive makes you inspiring is that you're fully being in present in what you do. Thank you for being you. um, thank you for, and on behalf of the people around you, if you don't hear it often enough, I'm sure they appreciate it. I enjoy if you give me 1 hour of your life and I was able to perceive and feel this, I can imagine what do you do with people that is around you for longer than that.
Thank you.
Who would you perceive will be a great guest for this podcast?
I'm just trying to think of those men that I most interact with and most respect. I mean, my good friend that I referenced, whose son has a very rare disease, I think he would be
A great guest.
a great guest. It's such an interesting story where, when his son was age 8, they got a diagnosis that he was 1 in 2 million with this genetic disease that he has. And as the universe has it, my friend Kyle, he's in the science field. He knows that if you wrote him a blank check today for $1 billion, that doesn't guarantee that there's going to be a cure for his son next year, the year after that, 10 years from now. And his ability to move forward and do the things that he does, and in supporting his family, but also supporting the organization that supports the families impacted by this rare disease. That's the organization that I fundraise for. And, he's had a pretty amazing journey through separation and yoga and therapy and all of those things. And I, he's a friend I've always looked up to. But I also feel, we've been so similar since we were 8 years old. That's when we became friends. So it's been almost 40 years now that we've been best friends. And I think that he would be a good person to talk with.
Thank you. I would appreciate if you have a conversation, and if he be interested to give me a referral. Yeah. To close this episode, I would love for you to give us some wisdom, something that comes from your heart to those watching and listening right now.
Mm-hmm. I would say take whatever you're passionate about, and you may think it's something small, something somewhat meaningless, but find a way to take that passion and turn it into your purpose. It'll take you to places and teach you things that you never expected. And it's all from doing something that you love. And it's that why. It's something that's meaningful for you. It's something that you enjoy doing. It's something that if you have the opportunity to give it away, I don't think there's anything better. That's what I've tried to do with running. And it just doesn't apply to running. You don't have to be a runner and fundraise and guide blind athletes. I know people that make quilts and love making them to give them away. And there's just so many things that we're all good at and love doing. Turn it into purpose and really see how far it can go.
That's beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. An athlete, a father, a leader, a husband, a grandson, but overall, a man. Thank you for being here. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
And for all of you, let's connect again soon.